Well, why don't we start with a quick prayer? First of all, Lord, thank you. We're grateful that you allow us to gather here today. Thank you for allowing us to celebrate Mass. Thank you for the guidance and the wisdom and the golden nuggets of wisdom that our panelists are going to share with us today. We pray for all the families that are affected by this catastrophe, and we hope that this is a good opportunity for us to come back strong, nourished by your graces and mercies, and to be a testimony to your great glory and to the great work that we're doing and stay faithful in you. We ask this in Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So, welcome everybody. I'm sorry you're here. If you're here, it's because you responded to a call for information about the fires that have been plaguing our community. If you're here, I'm assuming either you are a victim yourself or you're a friend of a victim. I know about 15 families that have been affected by this. I myself have not been affected. When people ask me, hey, are you guys safe? My response is, yes, we're safe, but we're not okay. We're not okay with so many of our friends being affected by such a catastrophe. And, we're not going to get political today, but we wanted to put together this panel because there was a lot of information in the World Wide Web, right? There's a lot of YouTube videos, there's a lot of things happening. And as I kept looking at that information, I was being bombarded by all this information. I kept asking myself, which ones should I be listening to? Which ones are a stance? Which ones are a threat? And because, seriously, I didn't know what to trust, and I didn't know what to recommend to my friends that were asking for help. I was like, hold on. I'm sure our community has experts in all these areas. So that's what we did. We gathered several experts in, Val, you do tax. Rachel, you're a litigation attorney. She actually prosecuted a lot of the cases in San Diego, the San Diego fire. So she's been in the trenches. So this mimics it correctly. Ray is a partner at a company that actually represents several insurance companies. Peter, you're a general contractor. You're also a victim of this fire. And you might have seen Peter actually. He had a video of his family praying at the site of the house where it was burned, and it went pretty viral. And then Sarah is a very active member of our community as a broker and realtor. I know she's helped a lot of our families here in the Altadena, Pasadena, Southern California area. So between and Nathan, you are you're a survivor of one of the fires. Your family has gone through this, and I've asked Nathan to actually share his story and what to look for as a survivor. So, and I didn't introduce myself. Giovanni Jerez. I'm the least important person here. I'm just going to try to facilitate this so that it's relevant and practical to you. So here's the format. We're going to spend about an hour, each of us 10 minutes, 10, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, talking about some high-level things. You're not going to come out of here experts, but you're going to come out of here with some very practical knowledge to begin to take steps to rebuilding and coming out of the circumstances. Some of the things that you might not have thought about. I know 2 years ago, I myself was afflicted in a very personal situation. My middle son had stage 4 cancer, and I couldn't think. I was just overwhelmed with information. And I'm pretty sure many of you are feeling this way. So that's part of the reason why we're inspired to hey, we gotta do something to just rekindle action, right? So that wherever you are right now, wherever you're thinking about right now, whether it's to rebuild, whether it's to sell, whether you just don't know, this is the perfect place to start helping you think. So after we do the panel at a high level, what we want to do is stay here for another, we have this place until 8 o'clock. and to answer either individual questions. You're gonna walk away from here with all of our contact information, okay? So if you need to do follow-ups, do one-on-ones, you could do that. Everybody here has made themselves available exactly for that reason, to help you, to help our community, to help our parishioners. So hopefully I've done a good job at setting this up. And I wanted to start this panel with Ray because he does work he represents insurance companies. And when I was talking to him, I was like, I brought him my misconceptions of insurance companies. And he had a very interesting response back to me. So why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, I'm definitely in a unique position just in the sense of seeing what it's like on the inside of an insurance company, representing them, advising them, knowing how they think about things. And I think having sort of the insight from that side of things can be valuable, hopefully valuable to you. And I think, maybe my starting point really is to not see them as an enemy, but to see them as a friend. Like, they really do want to help you. Now, doesn't mean you don't need to be an advocate for yourself. It doesn't mean there may be issues and areas in which you might disagree or you might have a problem. But your starting point should not be coming at them as an enemy, but to think of them as your friend. And they really do. Like, all of my clients are bending over backwards right now because they're all stressed and overwhelmed and trying to bring people into their organization to help respond as quickly as possible. But in general, they really do want to step to the plate, and anyone who's been impacted already should have been, receiving checks in the mail, receiving, hotel stays and all these things. And that's really kind of their starting point. So there are, issues that could arise that I'll get to in a second. But that shouldn't be your starting point. And you're going to see predators out there, frankly, trying to get you to hire them, whether it's lawyers, whether it's public adjusters. There's people out there that are going to try to make money off of this. And so they're going to be coming to you and try to get you to sign up for something. And at least as far as the insurance companies, I know Rachel's going to talk later about something that I think is an exception to that principle. But at least your starting point with the insurance companies should not be in an adversarial position. They really do want to help you. And we are going to talk about a couple, problems that may come up, and that's where the equation may start to shift. One thing that you should be thinking about right out of the gate is asking for a copy of your policy. You're entitled to a full copy of your policy. It's very likely either it was destroyed in the fire if you kept a hard copy, or even an email. When your policy gets renewed, they typically will send you just the declaration page, which is sort of the 1 or 2 page summary. But it's very unlikely that you actually have a complete copy of your current policy. You're entitled to that. I think that's one thing right out of the gate you should be asking for. And then in relation to that, I would ask your adjuster to just walk you through and explain all the coverages that you have that you're entitled to. I'm going to give you a little bit of a kind of a one-on-one overview of what to notice in your policy. Down the road, there may a lot of different policy terms and conditions may come into play. I just want to give you sort of like a basic summary of how most policies work. And there are exceptions to that. I think the FAIR plan, for example, provides much more minimal coverage if anyone's on the FAIR plan. But basically, your coverage, think of your coverage as like buckets of coverage. So it's what we would call coverage A, coverage B, coverage C, coverage D. And so those are different sections in the policy, and you'll see it right on the front on the deck page. Coverage A is your dwelling coverage. It covers just the structure of your house. Coverage B is what they call other structures, and so that's anything that's detached, right? So like your pool would be another structure. If you have a garage that's connected, it's part of your dwelling. If it's disconnected from your house, it's considered other structures, and that's got its own separate limit, right? So you may have, $500,000 in dwelling coverage and $100,000 in other structures coverage. That distinction becomes very important depending on how much each of those different things cost to rebuild. Like pools or basketball courts or things like that are considered other structures. You may blow out that limit because to rebuild that part of it may cost you $200,000. And you may have plenty of dwelling coverage, and maybe your dwelling actually didn't burn down. Maybe it only has smoke damage, but your yard was more impacted. So those two different buckets are going to be important to be aware of and to notice. So you got dwelling is coverage A, other structures coverage B, Coverage C is personal property, so that's your contents. That would be, your clothes, your furniture, anything that is movable. Appliances, if they're attached, are considered usually dwelling. Personal contents would be anything that is movable. And then finally, coverage D, that's the short term for it, the acronym we use is ALE. It's alternative living expense. So that's when they put you in a hotel or an Airbnb. That would be your alternative living. And so just to sort of, number one, know that there's these 4 different buckets is going to become quite important for a lot of things, decisions you'll have to make down the road. So just be aware that there's these 4 buckets, and insurance companies are very loath to intermix them. So if you have more than enough coverage in this area and not enough coverage in that area, you might think to yourself, well, why don't you just push this over into that bucket and pay me over here? And they just don't do that. They're pretty darn strict about it. Go ahead.
Cover C covers vehicles as well?
Covers what as well?
Cover C, the bucket C, that covers vehicles, whatever's personal property?
Personal property, yeah. So anything
Vehicles.
yes, exactly. Anything in the house that is movable, so furniture would be in that, clothes would be in that, like if you have standing lamps, whereas if it's like and coming out of the ceiling, that becomes dwelling, where if it's a standing lamp, it's personal property.
The way it was explained to me is if you take your house and you dump it and shake it, everything that comes out is personal property. Anything that stays there and is attached to the house is part of the dwelling.
All right, so that's just sort of a basic. That's going to become a foundation for other things I'll talk about, and you'll sort of find out as you go along. So I said in general, they're your friend. They really are out there to try to serve you well. I mean, the adjusters, they're just people too. They're just trying to do the right thing, and I think your starting point should be to think of them in that way. But the most likely problem that is going to occur is going to be insufficient limits. And so you have to kind of be very aware of that. I'll just give you one example to start. ALE, let's say you have $90,000 in limits for alternative living. And so now you're looking for another rental house. And let's say you find something for $5,000 a month that the insurance company is willing to pay. Well, $5,000 a month with a $90,000 limit, right? You can do some pretty quick math and you're like, okay, maybe that'll cover me for 2 years. But you're hearing people say this could take 3, 4, 5 years to get back into your house, right? And so you have to be really, really cautious and careful about what are you going to select as your alternative living location, and is it going to get you through that period of time? So you have to do a little math and a little thinking about like, well, maybe I need to be in something a little bit smaller and not as nice because I have to be prepared for these limits to last me for 3 years or 4 years. And so don't just think, I'm just going to get the best place I possibly can and it's all going to be paid for by the insurance company. I don't have to worry about it. Well, you are going to have to worry about it because at some point, if that coverage runs out, now you're suddenly on your own dime, and maybe now you're paying your mortgage and having to pay a rent on top of it. So you want to be very careful and aware of what are your limits, how far is that going to go, how long is it likely to take me, and I know that's hard because we don't really know. Like some people are saying 3 years, some people are saying 5 years. Well, that's a huge difference if you've got $90,000 in ALE that's supposed to last you, or if you're staying in a fancy hotel right now, it's like, well, is that the best decision if I'm burning through my limits? Maybe I need to take a step back and find something that's a little bit more cost sensitive. Another problem that, sorry, go ahead.
So, speaking of limits, there's also a limitation of like 36 months to have a house completed, right, to get paid by the insurance. So if we're talking about 4 or 5 years, would that go past the limitations?
No, I think that they have to pay out until they run out of limits. So I think the 36 months may be in the policy, but I think that they will pay. They will pay you as long as it takes. Subject to the policy limits. They can't force you to be done in 36 months if due to the circumstances of the situation. Now it'd be different if it's like because you're not getting things done on your end. But as long as you're doing your best to try to get the thing rebuilt, I think they will extend that. But that's a good question to ask your adjuster, and see how strictly they're going to enforce that.
That's what they told me when it happened. If I was demonstrating a good faith effort to get it to be rebuilt, then it wouldn't matter how long it took, unless they could see that I was just doing nothing for a few years.
And I do think that I think the state issued some emergency orders because this has been declared an emergency that I think require the insurance companies to relax some of those requirements. One client that I'm helping with is one of their problems is they purchased the policy as their primary residence, and then they moved out and converted it into a rental and never changed their policy. And there's a difference between a landlord policy and a primary residence policy. So that can be a very tricky situation, and he doesn't know if they're going to deny him or not. They technically would be within their right to deny him any coverage on that. But the argument that we're kind of making is, well, they renewed him without ever asking him. And so most of you, I think your experience is probably that your policies just get auto-renewed. And so if you were never asked the question of like, has there been a material change? Are you still living in the house? Then I think you have a decent argument that it's a little bit on them for not asking the question. It's not that you've misled them in any way. It's just that they auto-renewed, never asked you the question. And so, we'll see. We'll find out. I think he's got the better half of that argument. Another thing I want to talk about on the insufficient limits side of it is because of inflation, right? Our policies don't necessarily get increased to account for how much things are actually costing. And so you may have, let's say, $1 million in replacement, but what if it costs you $1.5 million? Well, whose fault is that? And the general principle in the law is that it's your responsibility as the person purchasing insurance to make sure you purchased enough insurance. So the starting point is really going to be, it's your responsibility to make sure you had enough insurance. Now there can be exceptions to that if you, when you selected the limits, if you asked them, well, how much should I get in insurance? And maybe they said, oh yeah, this is going to be enough. And then you have an argument that it's kind of their fault that you didn't have enough insurance. And so I see this, I litigate this kind of issue frequently on behalf of insurance companies. And if you can make that argument, right, if you have a memory of those phone calls when you purchased the insurance, if you ask for their opinion, their advice on it, on what the limit should be, that gives you a pretty strong argument. So if you're at all worried about not having enough limits, you want to kind of like start to mentally recollect those communications you had when you first purchased the policy. And if it becomes an issue, if you maybe already that's going to be an issue, you can ask them for a copy of those recorded phone calls, because most insurance companies will record those phone calls. They're not very good at saving those recordings. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an opening to say, I remember I asked you and you told me this was enough. And so what I would do in that situation is I would right away ask them, I want all recorded calls that I've had with the insurance company since the beginning of my policy with you. And if they have it, great, you can hear it and find out what exactly happened. And if they don't have it, right, that's important information too, because it now gives you a lot more flexibility to say, well, this is what I remember happened in that call, and now they can't contradict you because they don't have a copy of the recording. So if you're all worried about limits, I would ask now for a copy of all recorded calls that you've had with the insurance company, whether it's on the underwriting or on the claim side.
So I believe what you're talking about is classification, right? Because there's
Right.
There's a personal property is one
Right.
insurance. When you come out rent out the property.
Yep, the alternative living.
That's commercial insurance now.
Right. Yeah, you mean, yeah, exactly. When you become a landlord because you're now renting out your policy, that's a different, or your house, that's a different kind of policy. And the insurance company is entitled to know what you're doing with the house because it's...
They would call it commercial.
Correct. Yeah, so that would, and I said, don't go out and hire a lawyer out of the gate. Most people are not going to need insurance lawyers, okay? That would be a situation where if you get denied, maybe you want to talk to a lawyer at that point. If anyone has had an insurance company deny their claim, then you probably do want to talk to somebody. Now, I represent insurance companies, so I wouldn't be the guy you hire, but I'm happy to do, and I don't charge for this because for me, it's a service to the community, But you can have a conversation with me, and I can help you decide if do you need a lawyer or not, and if so, I have people that I would recommend. But yeah, if you get denied for something like that, then that could be a very messy, tricky situation, and that would be where you would want to hire a lawyer. Let's see, I think I had one. Oh yeah, the one other thing I wanted to very quickly raise before I pass it on is one question I think you're going to be faced with is, do you want to cash out? Because you might be looking, staring down the barrel of, 3+ years in rebuild, living in a rental that may be not suitable for your family. It may be a very tight market out there to even find suitable rentals, and Sarah will talk about that a little bit. But that's one question you should be asking yourself, and you probably want to ask the adjuster, if I were to just take the insurance money to go buy a different property and just sell the plot of land, how's that math going to work out for me? And so that's something you want to really, I think, actually be thinking about right now, because what you don't want to do is be, a year, 2 years into the process and then just get fed up and decide I'm just going to cash out. But now you've spent a bunch of that money, which you're now not going to get in your cash out. So you want to be thinking about that, and you want to be, I think, asking the adjuster, what would that look like? If I were to just cash out, take the money and go buy a different house, how much money would I be entitled to? And I want to introduce a concept that I think will come up in this conversation, and that's recoverable depreciation. So a brand new house, right? The materials are worth something, and even though your house is appreciating in time, the cost of that material is depreciating, right? So a brand new piece of lumber is worth X, a 20-year-old piece of lumber is worth something less than that. And that's what recoverable depreciation is. And the way insurance works is they are only going to pay you that recoverable depreciation after you've actually rebuilt, right? Because the idea of insurance is you can't profit off of insurance. So the material of your house, it was worth something at the time of the fire, which is less than the cost of new material. And so if you were to cash out, you'd basically be walking away from that recoverable depreciation, which may be 20 or 30% of the rebuild cost. So if you have $1 million in rebuild coverage, you may be able to cash out for $700,000. So you're leaving that money on the table, but it might still be worth it just to avoid all the hassle and the headache and the heartache. So it's something you want to be thinking about, and you want to ask your adjuster, what does that look like? How much would I get in cash out today if I were to just simply take the money and buy a new property, versus what would I be getting if I rebuilt? And start to think about that, because you want to make that decision as early as possible as a general matter, because you don't want to sort of half endure all the pain and then decide I can't take it anymore. You really want to make that decision as early as possible.
And Nathan, I think that's what happened to you, right? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that before we move over to Bell.
There's a question in the back.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sing.
They can either let cash out or not. Go. Obviously, we're gonna be expensive, right? We have the
Right.
whatever expenses they shake. They are
Like the debris removal, you mean, right? Are you talking about the expense of removing the debris and at least giving you a clean plan? Yeah, so they'll do that. They'll do that anyways. Yeah, that's actually a separate bucket as well. So they will pay to remove all the debris so you can at least have a clean plot of land to sell. So yeah.
It doesn't. No, the debris removal doesn't reduce your dwelling coverage. That's a separate category. It's usually, I think it's like 10% of the dwelling, but it doesn't reduce your dwelling coverage to have the land cleaned
Because
out.
the land is just one minimum. Is it the land costs less than the if it's a building?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on where the land is, but some land is pretty valuable. But yeah, it's not. Yeah, I mean, it's good to hand it over to Nathan, because he experienced this in the Thomas fire 7 years ago, and went through all of this mental process. And I'll let him tell a story.
Yeah, I basically did what Ray said not to do, which is I spent 1.5 years trying to rebuild, and then decided to just take the money and buy a different house. So some advice I would give is first open a new bank account and get a credit card or a debit card that's connected to that account, and then put all the insurance money in there because it'll make it much easier to keep track of it.
Yeah.
And then using an app, online service like Simplify or like Wave. I think Wave Accounting, Wave Apps is what I used. There's a free version of it, and using that to just create your 5 buckets. So again, there's dwelling, so that's just rebuilding the house. There's the contents, everything in the house. There's the other structures if you had something that was also built on your property. There's a debris removal, which is considered a separate bucket. And then there's the alternative living expenses, which is just paying for your rent or hotel. And am I forgetting one?
Nope, that's what it's at.
So if you just keep those, and so what I did when I set up the other account in the software is I just when the checks came in, I credited them to the right bucket. And the insurance company would sometimes give you a check and then say, oh, half of it is for this bucket and half for another. And another time they called and said, oh, actually, I got that wrong. And they said, actually, 40% was for this bucket. So they switch it around and they'll give you reports. But then you just mirror that in your budgeting. And then every time you spend from that, you mark it as an expense to that one. So basically you want to get back to zero. They give you you get a check for this much money and then you spend it down to zero. Yeah, sure. So there's coverage A. Coverage A is dwelling. So that's to rebuild the house itself. There's coverage B, is other structures. So that's anything that's not connected to the house but is a structure built on your property. There's
Like a garage or pool, right?
ADU.
Yeah.
ADU.
Okay.
Coverage C is contents. That's the easy one to remember because C stands for contents. And that's everything in the house.
So for my situation, my house, our house is broken, but it's messed up. We couldn't get, after we were canceled by insurance 2 years ago, a year later, insurance 2 came in, canceled us, so we had no options but to go to air plan. They don't know about contents.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
right.
have to have DIC to have, but then combined coverage cannot exceed 3 million, even though I need more than that.
The additional coverage, in addition to the fair plan, still can't exceed $3 million.
That's what my agent said when we purchased it. And
Yeah.
then I saw an umbrella, but she said you're already happy in the DIC, which is the fund.
Yeah, so you have 2 different carriers you're working with. One for fair, which is the dwelling only, and then you have I forget what they call it, like a wraparound policy that covers all your other things, which is good because some people got the fair and nothing else, and they would just be out. They would just be out on their. I don't think it covers ALE either. I don't think it covers alternative living. So you have a separate policy that covers the other things.
So I catched up at the
I think in your wraparound policy, I believe that's where you would get your ALE coverage. DIC. I don't know. What does DIC stand for? I've not heard that acronym before, but
I think that would be what we're calling the wraparound coverage.
yeah. Okay.
But then she told me that there's still money in the contract.
Oh, it just covers contents.
Yeah, so let's follow up all the individuals after we got a whole while we'll set up for that. So let's do that.
But
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point though, because one of the first things you also want to do is look through your coverage and just try to get a sense if you're okay. That was the thing that was the greatest relief for me that I'm thankful for, is that I was able to work with a friend who was familiar with my insurance and go through it and just see for each of the coverage areas, I was okay. It didn't mean there wasn't going to be fights or challenges in the future, but I just recognized that for my contents I was going to be okay, and for ALE I was going to be close to okay. And that's a big thing to figure out, because if you're not going to be okay, then you need to start figuring out, do you need a lawyer? Do you need to go after the, well, I don't want to give you legal advice, but there are other ways of trying to collect the money to help you through FEMA. And there's people in the room that work with FEMA as well that can help. So
Can you talk a little bit about your shift from wanting to rebuild and a year and a half later, we're like, you know what? I'm going to cash out and I'm going to use this to buy another property.
yeah.
Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my advice would be to think about that option. It may not be possible, and Sarah will help you with that in terms of your contingency and if you have to sell the lot and all that. But you should at least consider that as an option, to know that's an option and not wait a year and a half to think about it. Because it's a personal decision. Because at first we were excited about being able to build our dream home and, rebuild. And we bit off a little bit more than we could chew, and it was taking so long. It looked to us like it would take 3.5 years or something, and we just needed to get back into a house. And fortunately, we kept our kids in the same schools, which I think was a big help for them because they didn't need to switch. We were tempted to pay more rent, a nicer house, but in a different school district. And so we were very grateful that we found a house that was actually a little too small for us, but allowed us to keep our kids in the same school, to keep their same routine, and also, since it was lower rent, we had a much longer runway before we ran out of the ALE insurance. So that put us in a good position, but then we just had a lot of challenges with the rebuild. We had some issues with the neighbors and some rules in our neighborhood about sight lines and how we were putting that together. It was just a very long, protracted process. One of the big challenges you'll find with insurance is that they don't want to commit to anything. Because you want to say, look, just tell me how much it is, how much I'm going to get at the end of the day so that I can budget for this. And they'll say, well, your limit says this, but you also have a rider that will increase based on cost of materials or inflation. And then they won't commit to anything. And so we felt like we were in the middle of an architect who we had to keep driving. And whenever we forgot to drive them, they didn't seem to be doing much. Then we had a contractor, a general contractor, who was very important because they helped us come up with an estimate of how much it was going to cost to rebuild our house. The insurance also did this with their own contractor, and they came out with a wildly lower number. I agree with what Ray is saying, that the insurance, my experience was that they were very helpful. They were trying to do the right thing. But that was one area that they weren't trying to do the right thing there, because they use software, and the software that they use comes up with a low ball offer of how much it's going to cost. So you need your own contractor to come up with an estimate that can look just like theirs, except with bigger numbers and maybe some more items that they forgot. You can't build your dream home in that way. It has to be like for like. You have to try to recover what you lost, but they just underestimate everything. So we had our contractor that we work with.
Well, you say they, you mean the software that they use tends to lowball everything. So, got it. It's not the people, right? It's like it's just the standards that they're using that are shrinking it, and that's why it's important for you to have the right general contractor to help you think beyond the software that they are using to give you your estimate.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the piece of software is called Xactimate, and I think they're aware that it provides a low ball offer, and they're not surprised when you push back. That's not a surprise for them when you say, "Whoa, that's way too low. My contractor says this." That is very normal for them.
So maybe talking about contractor, Peter, why don't you jump in and get a contractor this will go 40 years.
First of all, I'm Peter Halpin, and I lost my home in this fire, completely gone. Can I see hands of everyone that have lost their homes, just completely gone? Okay, and other people maybe just had damage? Okay. We got a big road ahead of us. Everybody knows that because so many people have lost their home. We're gonna have a shortage of contractors, a shortage of labor with so many homes down. I'm gonna cut straight to the point. I'm gonna get to these points. Every licensed contractor in the state of California is supposed to have one of these cards on his person, okay? So when you get to that point, and it's gonna be different for everybody, you make sure you get this card and take a photocopy of it and a copy of his license. Okay, you have him take a picture of his license, and he's required to carry liability insurance and a certificate of workers' comp. Now, they have to, and those insurance companies will create those certificates, and he's got to give those to you. But you need to follow through and call those insurance companies and make sure that they're the real thing, because there's contractors out there that will counterfeit the certificates, and the homeowner will not look into it to see if they're truly insured. Okay, I mean, this is how sneaky some of them can be. I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm competing with guys that aren't playing by the rules. Okay, and so they'll do anything. So much
That far.
the state contractor's license. Yeah, yes. And I have two different licenses. I have a general contractor's license and a concrete. I actually specialize in concrete, and I do foundations and things like that.
To find out if the contractor's on the way, sir,
Well, he's got to have this on him. So,
we check on the number. Yeah, don't
yes. You can call the state contractors board, and they'll tell you whether or not the guy's in good standing also, okay? Okay, a couple other things I want to get right to here, because this is going to be kind of a long haul. Some residents still have, who have been in their homes for a long time, may be lucky enough to still have their plans, their architectural plans. Does anybody have those in here? I mean, I come across customers that had a house built 40 and 50 years ago, and the plans were passed along to each new buyer of the house. And that can be helpful, because I am going to basically, my footprint of my house is going to pretty much remain the same, okay? And I'm kind of being proactive in this whole thing. Before you, if that's your thought and you're not going to make your house any larger and you're going to stay to the same footprint, the same size, before your foundation goes away, you need to have someone, even a family member can do this, go out there and measure your footprint of your house, measuring your foundation. So you can put that down on paper, okay, before it goes away. I have 2 properties on my house. I've already had that done. My son-in-law has come out and done all that. And so what I was going to say is, so if you happen to have those blueprints, it makes life a lot easier for another architect that's going to come in and work with you, or a builder. Okay, at least you've got that plot plan ready to go.
What in the city have the icons?
Not necessarily. Okay, some of the stuff that was built on my house was built so long ago. They have the permit, but you can't always track down the plans. Okay, and my house was built in 1914. Okay, I just want to show everybody. A lot of us have these this is my house, the little modest California bungalows. Okay, I only have in the front house, it was about 1,700 square feet. I'm going to be able to rebuild my house with my insurance, because I'm not building a monstrosity. You know, people that are living in the big homes up against the hills, I mean, they are going to need way over $1 million to rebuild. But I'm not. I do have a good insurance policy, and a couple other things I need to tell you. They're going to allow people, and I got this, if you will, from the horse's mouth. FEMA has set up down there by the PCC, what's it called, Sean? Yeah. And not only is FEMA set up to help you with all sorts of questions, a lot of the other departments in the county and in the city of Pasadena are set up inside the building to answer all the questions that you need to know. I found out that and this is from the building department that was there, they're going to allow everyone up to 20% increase in the square footage of your house, and they will not reassess that extra square footage. Okay, so you could go a little bit bigger with your home. You have to remember that's going to cost you a little bit more money too. So those are things you have to take into consideration.
You said reassess
The taxes. Yes, you won't have. This is what I've been told. Okay, you won't have to pay the extra taxes, which was a surprise to me, and that's actually a benefit for everybody. The other thing that I found out down there is, people may not know this, but those SBA loans, everybody, those are available to everybody here that's been involved in that fire. And not only additional home loans, but also business loans. I lost my entire office, home office, and 2 of my work trucks in the fire, okay? And the home loans are 2.5% interest. So let's just say, everybody's situation is different. I have a pretty low mortgage, okay? Some of you people may be maxed out on a mortgage. But if you're not gonna have enough money with your insurance, and you have the means, and you're gonna need extra money, you may have to take out one of these SBA low interest loans. But this is the nice thing about it. Whatever amount they give to you, you can put it in a bank for a year. And if you don't touch it and you don't need it, you can give the money back to them, no charge. Okay, this kind of blew my mind because at 2.5%, you could stick that money in a 4.5% rate, and it's out there if you look for it, and you at least make a little interest off the money. I mean, so I was exploring this thing thoroughly, you know what I mean? And also, if people don't know this, you know, your mortgage payments, if you still have them, can be deferred. Did we want to talk about that too?
No.
Oh, you're going to talk about that? So,
Can.
yeah, at least for several months. And also, if you have any outstanding credit card balances with B of A or Wells Fargo, they're deferring your payments too for 3 or 4 months if you just need a breather. So I'm just letting you know that stuff's all available out there. You just have to call them. And I've already done all that. They've allowed us to defer our payments without being penalized. Okay, so I think that's important for everybody to know.
You know, one of the fortunately linked to me was around, or I think it was Nathan as well, was the concept of making sure that an architect and general contractor are equally yoked, right? And like, either, do you recommend to work with 2 separate entities, or making the general contractor that already has some architectural services and that we need them with one person versus multiple entities?
Well, the demand is going to be incredible. You're going to be very lucky to be able to find that in most cases, because there's going to be such a need. You know, most of the general contractors that I know, you know, they can handle 1, 2, maybe 3 jobs at a time. You see what I'm saying? But you're doing with residential construction, or they're running on a thin line. They're getting themselves overbooked, and it's going to take the individual projects longer to get completed. So we have a minimum of 7,500 homes that need to be rebuilt. Okay, so it's not going to be an easy task. It really isn't. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm 65, but I'm in good health. If I was 75 years old, my wife and I already said we couldn't do this. We physically don't think we could get through it because it may take 2 to 3 years, depending on how the bureaucrats, they may slow things down a little, but we're hoping they don't, you know. I'm being very proactive. I am a contractor. The minute I knew my house was gone, I started thinking about all the things I needed to do to be ready to go, okay? And that's easier for me than so many of you people out there. I understand it. My wife and I have been on a roller coaster ride, you know. There's been a lot of crying and stuff. We left with just the clothes on our back, and I think a lot of you are in the same situation. And all of a sudden, you know, I do have a lot of family in the area, so I'm blessed in that way. But everybody's in a different situation. I've come across people that have no one. They're frightened to death. They have no place to go. They don't have the family I have around, you know. And so people are in a state of shock, and they're scared. There's a lot of people that are scared.
Yes, getting about the heart, Good. What? There's this the architect question. So you said everything's gonna be very hard, but will they often then have a separate architect and a contractor?
Yeah, I have contractors that use a multitude of architects. You know, so they're not.
The contractor is kind of the main.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Architect did.
And we usually don't. My company, we actually specialize in concrete. So I mean, you know, I'm going to have plenty of work because I'm going to be redoing people's foundations. But a lot of the foundations in Altadena, they're raised foundations, and a lot of them have to be built that way because we have a lot of slopes. You're not going to be slab foundations are cheaper, but the thing is a lot of the lots aren't flat. Okay, and so you're going to have to rebuild your home with a raised foundation, but it's a little more expensive. But if a lot of you are satisfied with the size of your house and you don't have you know, choice insurance, you got to keep your costs down. So if you're satisfied with the way your home was, you need to rebuild it about the way it was, and you can get it done for a lot less If you start to redesign and remodel or make things bigger or go 2 stories, you know, it's going to cost you a lot more money, and you just may not have enough money to do it. I mean, that's all there is to it. Can I ask you something? What year was it when your house burned down?
End of 2017.
2017. Okay, well, real estate values had started coming back up. You know, if something like that would have happened in 2009 or 10, the values started to really go up. You know, we were depressed, but some people would say depressed. So that makes a difference on how much money you're going to come out with at the end of the line. We're maxed out right now. So if you have a huge mortgage, you're not going to walk away with anything, you know, if you try to cash out. So
You said something interesting in your comments. You said most contractors can only do 3 to 4 houses per year. Does that mean that if I were looking for a contractor, I should ask these questions? Hey, how many other clients you'd like to service?
yeah, how many jobs you got going? I mean, my brother Tim's out here. He was my partner in business, and we saw guys that would spread themselves thin, you know, and so unless they have just incredible crews, a lot of these general contractors have in-house framers, you know, framers that are working for them, but most of them just hire each contractor as a sub, and they rely on having those good subcontractors to get a good job and get it done efficiently, you know. And so, yes, sir.
That was inside. I'm the project manager for this high build.
Okay.
And so, kind of what has brought me here to the community is I've had 2 separate families where there's like 3 rebuilds that they've requested from us. And so that's tasked us with looking into how we can rebuild the city back faster. So my understanding is that the permit approval or the plan approval is just going to be on the architect's stamp. So they're going to try to eliminate that 6-month approval time down to 4 days. We do residential design and build. So in our head, what we're kind of thinking is we already have pre-approved plans for the many years that we've already been building homes. And so we were kind of thinking, hey, we could offer multiple options to folks in order to get that fast approval and start building as fast as we can.
Yeah, there's another young group over here that's kind of doing the same thing. Excuse the expression, but kind of cookie cutter type things, because a lot of the homes down low and kind of in the midsection of Pasadena are very modest homes, okay? But I think a lot of people would like to still see kind of the charm of Altadena, you know, stay intact, instead of seeing all these houses going up that look exactly the same across the board. But if you can give people a variety of floor plans, and the other thing, everybody, if you like the way your house looks, look for pictures, photographs if you were able to get any out of the house, but now those are all online. So you should, from the front of your house, the side of your house, the back of your house, because if you were satisfied with that look, it makes it much easier for the architect or the designer to just say, hey, we like this, build it the way it was. And you get that thing moving a lot faster.
And I think it was between your house.
Yes, ma'am.
The teams, they've kind of taken that and what they want to fast track. So what they're doing is once the architect and the engineer stamp the plans, they're going to deem that suitable. And so building is going to start a little bit faster than what it was in, say, for instance, the Palisades fire and/or 2017. So the process, they want to move the process faster. Instead of it being a 3-year build, we're going to be looking at something maybe a year to a year and a half, if we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the immensity of it.
It's a lot of homes. It's a lot of homes.
Yes, ma'am.
Under the circumstances, we need to find to hire a contractor for rebuild, for estimate to rebuild.
Okay, well, I'm telling you what I'm doing. We live on a little street called Lewis Avenue. It's right by Elliott, okay? I've already started to do things that might be a little questionable as far as being ready to attack my project. But I want to help all my neighbors too, okay? And so I'm already getting all wound up to be able to, if they'll allow me to do it, to start clearing lots for my neighbors and getting them ready to go. I've already made contact with a civil engineer to shoot all the lots on my block. There's 20 houses on my street. And so, because you're going to have to put in all new monuments for your properties, okay? So you need a civil engineer out there to get all your new monuments in, because you're going to clean the, what's that?
Was that survey?
The survey. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the survey of your land, okay? And so, and I've already made contact with these people because they're going to be in demand, you know? And they are going to, every property, I think, is going to be required to be resurveyed, okay? It didn't used to be all that costly. Maybe it was a couple $1,000, but everything's gone up, you know? But my whole block's probably going to cost more than that. And I'm talking with all my neighbors to let them know what I'm up to, because if you could do it in that way, you might be able to get some discounted prices to have your whole block surveyed all at the same time, okay? And that'll expedite things. You know, you got those property lines ready to go, and you got the lot cleared, and you just get some plans put together, and you know they should be able to let you attack it. I mean, if you saw that roundtable with our president, he's saying let these people build. You know, I mean they were all saying 18 months, 18 months before you can even break ground. Are they out of their minds? I mean, we got to get this thing moving. You know, so he's got the right idea, and when you have a disaster like this, there are certain restrictions and regulations that you have to do away with. You've got to let people clear their property, whether they do it themselves or they hire contractors, because otherwise people are going to lose hope. People are discouraged to see our community like this. And so anyways, I'm really pushing for that, and I'm going to see what kind of success I have on my street, because I'm going to start doing it sooner rather than later, okay? You got to get these big bins and dumpsters ready to go. One of the local companies is behind me all the way. And those are the things that people are going to need on their streets to clear their lots. So.
Did you want to comment something?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I represent a local nonprofit. I'm a local architect, as well as a few other architects and community members. We founded the Foothill Catalog.
And he lives right on the edge of the fire, their neighbor.
Yeah, we were, me and my wife, up on Montana Street, just south of Altadena, so we were evacuated for a week. We kind of been in the same boat of trying to figure out what's going on. Thankfully, we were safe, but now as architects, we're looking to find a way to give back, knowing kind of the process of building homes. And I think what a lot of people will find, what Peter mentioned, is building a custom single-family residential home is expensive. And there might be a gap from what people can afford, from what their insurance can provide, what means they have resources, to what it actually might cost to rebuild a home. So our goal is to really lower that gap of affordability by streamlining the process from architects, collaborating with architects, engineers, and builders to produce a set of cataloged homes. So, similar to models in the past, like if you've heard of Sears catalog homes, that populated, honestly, a lot of these neighborhoods before. Getting pre-designed, pre-priced, pre-approved plans by the county or by government authorities can really streamline not only the process of designing a home, but of building a home too, and having contractors ready to take on the job and who are part of the design process and also part of the build process. Therefore, really lowering affordability and being able to actually build back people's land instead of, people might be priced out of the neighborhood and losing the fabric of the community. So we're here to talk to anyone who wants to learn more, trying to just provide the resource to keep Altadena,
And that's Alex and Cynthia, they're an American couple that work really on that.
What's the name of your building around?
It's the Foothill Catalog Foundation, and we have some material we can. Yeah, the Foothill Catalog Foundation. So we have some information if anyone wants to stop by, talk to any of us board members here.
We'll include it. We'll also
Yeah.
include it in the follow-ups on this. So now to another topic that you're probably not thinking about, but you should. Tax implications. Val.
So first of all, I just want to put a disclaimer in the announcement. It says there that I am an expert on FEMA. I have no clue about FEMA, but my expertise, if you will, is taxes. So that's what I do. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share with you some things to consider. Just hearing from all these people, I'm overwhelmed. And I don't even have a house that's been burnt, you know. And so, obviously, it is a challenge. So, I guess one practical recommendation is for you guys to make sure that you have, maybe get a notebook where you can write down things to do. Obviously, there's the contractors, there's the insurance, and there's also taxes. Now, you might say, well, what about taxes? So, I just wanted to share with you, because the location where your house burned is considered a federally declared disaster area. So there are some reliefs that have been provided. So for example, tomorrow is the beginning of the tax season. So you might say, well, I don't care about that because my house is burnt, right? So there are certain things that I think you should consider. Number one, there's two pieces to this. There's for all tax payments, so if you were making tax payments, estimated taxes and so on, okay, or even extensions, that are due between January 7th through October 15th, 2025, they've all been extended automatically through October 15th, 2025. So that's for all tax payments in general. The next thing is the tax filings, the tax forms have to be filed, right? And that's for individuals as well as for businesses. Different businesses, obviously they have different tax deadlines. And so obviously they're covered from January 7th through October 15th. They also have been extended to October 15th, 2025. Then you might say, well, all the tax payments and tax filings have been extended, so I guess I probably shouldn't be worried right now. But there's something that I would encourage you to consider, and that is, and I don't know what it's like when it comes to the insurance, because what happens is that as a federally declared disaster area, you have an option. As you know, the fires basically happen in 2025. There is this tax provision where you can claim the losses that you incurred in 2024 tax return, the year before. And we are now in the season where we will be filing our tax returns for 2024. So it's something to consider. Now, it's not as simple as that, because the next question is, okay, I can actually claim what we consider as a casualty loss as a result of the fires, right? The question is, what's the amount that you're going to put in there that will be allowable for you to claim? And so that's something for you to think about. Okay, well, what's my adjusted basis? How much did I buy the house for at the very beginning? And I know that some of you actually have bought your house a long time ago, 50 years ago or something like that. So then you have to look into that, and then at the same time you have to look at, again, it's a challenge, how much additions, improvements, et cetera, that you have actually put into the house, because you're going to have to take a look at that. So in terms of how much you can claim as a loss, it's the lesser of, and I'm simplifying this, okay? It's the lesser of how much you bought the house for, your adjusted basis, plus the improvements, minus the insurance reimbursement. So that's something to look into also, right? Or the reduction in the fair market value of your house before and after the fire. And you may need an appraiser to do that, to determine how you're going to calculate that. In fact, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. There was a guy, I think, who bought a house in Pacific Palisades for like $600-something thousand. The house burnt, and before it was burnt, the fair market value was $3.7 million. And so let's say before the fire happened, that was the amount, and obviously after that, there is still value to the house, even though the whole thing is burnt, the land, right? And so, but you would think that from 3.7 million, how much was the reduction in the value? Who knows, maybe the land is still worth $1 million, right? So in other words, the lesser amount would be the $600,000 plus whatever additions he has. So to simplify things, there's some number crunching that you're going to have to do. And that's something to see, okay, right, well, I have to begin. How much really was it that I bought the house for, et cetera, and then think about all the renovations, improvements that you incurred. So that's something to consider, right? And also, I think it would be good for you to consult with someone who specializes in taxes, okay? Just to kind of give you some ideas to consider, right? So you can claim, if you want to, the losses, and that, it's not just the house, it's the car, for example, et cetera, or whatever other personal properties that you lost as a result of the fire. So that's one thing to consider. So I talked about the extension, right? The extended due date is 10/15/2025 for the payments as well as the tax filings, and then the casualty loss that you can potentially claim when you prepare your 2024 tax returns. The other thing also is, Sarah, I think was going to say
Yeah, I
something.
just had a quick question. You talked about an appraisal. Will a CPA accept, because there are a lot of realtors that you probably know that will do a fair market analysis as complimentary. Would a CPA accept that?
No, well,
Instead of paying, $500 to $700?
that's true, yeah. It depends on the CPA, right? Because in general, you want to be able to substantiate it. And when you're talking like big dollar amounts, it might be worthwhile. So it depends on your risk appetite, right? Because sometimes you can look into Zillow, for example, and you say, okay, this is how much it was worth, right? But that's the fair market value. The next thing you need to look into is like, what's the actual amount? What's the actual basis of your property when you bought it, and all the additions that you basically spent in building that house? So that's the actual basis, that's the actual amount you spent on the house, not the value of the house. So that's completely different, right? The value of the house would be something where you'll need the appraiser. Now, the next thing I wanted to mention also has to do with property taxes. So, the property taxes, if you haven't done this, and I think it's one of the things that if you're to have to kind of, okay, what do I need to do like right now? And that is to apply for a reassessment of your property, okay? You can go to the LA County Assessor's website. There's a form which is called ADS-820, ADS-20, and you can easily find it there, okay, when you go to the assessor's office. Why would you consider this to apply for a reassessment? Because what happens is there are taxes due, right? April 10th, 2025, as well as December 10th, 2025. Now, the other good news is that Governor Newsom actually issued an executive order extending the payments for property taxes to April 10th, 2026. So that's a good set of information, right? But then the next thing is like, well, you don't want to pay the taxes that you were paying before, right? So that's where the reassessment comes in. So you go to the assessor's office, and you can actually apply online. So you can do that as soon as you can, and that way, at least if you're going to pay something for your property tax, hopefully it'll be reassessed. They're expediting it right now. At least that's what I heard from my sister who works there. Yes?
Or say, as PCC is all.
I'm sorry?
Are they at PCC? There's different.
Yeah.
PC. What PCC?
The PCC, so where they have FEMA, Red Cross.
Oh, they probably are there, right? Yeah. So that location that Peter mentioned.
My uncle lives at FEMA expert.
Oh.
He's a Notre Dame shirt.
Well, there we go. So he's a real FEMA expert, according to Nathan. So yeah, I don't claim to be an imposter. So if you got any questions.
Or were you reassessed at point?
The form is ADS-820, and so you can just go to the LA County Assessor's office, and you can submit this thing online. You can go there in person. I don't know if maybe they're in the facility where everybody else is. So, yes, Rob.
Peter mentioned that there's some exception where if you rebuild your house, you're going to be allowed to build up to 20% bigger without reassessment. So if you reassess now and then rebuild 20% larger, are you going to get reassessed at the larger rate?
They're saying no, but obviously we're all going to self-check that. I went to the counter, these guys, and they said no. So
yeah, that's what they said. That they'll keep the same rate that you have.
yeah,
Well, they'll lower your taxes while you don't have them.
that's right. Yeah.
And then you'll have the same rate, even if you go at 20% higher. It'll be the same rate, so you'll pay more taxes because it's a little bigger, but it be at the same rate. So you'll pay a rate per square footage of living space that you got. So if you go 20, there was, when lack of the rates, it'll be the same. If you go over 20%, then all the whatever you go over 10% will be reassessed of different construction. It'll be a different rate.
Right. Right.
Also on that note, the county planning, they said that to do construction like for lights, you use the same perimeter of your foundation. You don't have to obey by the setbacks. So, because a lot of the homes, they don't have the current setbacks, so you were really close to the property line.
Right there.
So, if you are building like for like, they will not.
problem.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem.
So the big message I got from you though is one, yes, you're gonna have more time to file the taxes, but you're really saying don't wait, take advantage of the benefits of getting one tax reduction and apply and putting them in 2024 now. So because it almost feels like that would help you maximize some of your save certainly more money for the time to come.
It could, yeah, but really, because obviously, the thing is you need to get information. You have to gather information, and that's really the key thing. Because what happens is that when we, CPAs, taxpayers prepare tax returns, we need information, and you have to provide how much did you buy the house for, all the improvements, et cetera, and you're gonna, because your house you've had it a long time ago. You're going to have some mental calculation and see what you can remember, right? Yes?
I have a question. So if the insurance is paying you for cost of living expenses, additional living expenses, and then you get money for your contents and stuff, is any of that taxed? Do you have any?
No. So the general rule is if you are getting reimbursed by insurance, the insurance proceeds is not going to be taxable to you. It's not taxable, except if, which I don't think is going to happen, if the insurance reimbursement is in excess of what you lost, your basis. So I doubt that that's going to happen, right?
Correct.
So,
Well,
right.
so can I say a
Sure.
little bit to that? So every bucket is different, right? So if you take the contents, and every insurance company is different, so you'll have to talk to them. But what mine did at the time was I had a limit, a total limit, and if I could create an itemized list of everything that I had, I could get the money back up to that limit of 100%. But they said, if I wanted, I could just take 70% of the limit without giving them any proof of anything. Because they saw that my house was completely destroyed. And I tried to build a list to come up with 100% because that would be not leaving any money on the table, but I couldn't do it. And so they just gave me the 70%. And in that case, I went through with the process I talked about before of having my account set up, and I bought things and kept the receipts and assigned it to that category. But I had to get a little bit creative because I was, buying a dining room table that might have been a little different than what I had before, and furniture that might have been a little bit different. And so, but I needed to make sure that I spent up that whole 70% by assigning those receipts to things I was buying that was making up the contents of my home. And by doing that, then I end up with zero. Because that's what you want. They give you this much money, you spend it all on the category, the bucket that you're supposed to spend it on. And if you can do that successfully and show a paper trail with a little creativity, then there's no taxes because you just ended up at zero again.
Yeah. So in fact, I just wanted to add on what Nathan said earlier, the analogy that he said that if you had a house, you turn it upside down and then you shake it, everything else that falls basically would be your personal property items, right? And so that's something for you to think about. What's inside that when you shake it, they'll fall off, right? Because they could be some of those assets, items that you have basically would could be claimed as losses. And then that's where the notebook becomes very, very important, right? And so you come up with an inventory, if you will, of the items that you think you've lost over the years, especially if you've been there for many, many, many years. I'm sure there's a lot of things there that all of a sudden you realize, wow, what, certain things that basically burnt and you don't remember. And so hopefully
Every bit of stored food, people that have pantries,
Yes.
every can of soup, everything.
right, yes.
Right down to anything
Right.
you could use. Yeah.
And also, since this is a community, it might be worthwhile also to talk to other friends of yours to see what's typically inside the house. Take a look at this thing. Let other people, friends of yours, take a look. These are the things that I've lost. So what do you think, right? Or maybe you had a few other things and items, cabinets, drawers, blah, 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 that maybe that you never thought about could be included in the inventory that you can get reimbursed for by insurance.
You can usually list it in categories. You don't have to can of tomato soup, can
Right,
of
yes.
broccoli soup, just like, pantry, whatever, put a number on it. Like they allow you to kind of bulk list it.
Right. So I wanted also to mention something, since we have the FEMA guide there, right? Basically, if you go to the FEMA website, there's certain things that they're actually offering. And of course, there's certain things also that will have to, there's an interplay with the insurance, but there's some immediate items. So for instance, there's this advanced financial assistance, which is $770. So for baby formula, water, et cetera, you can get that. And also for the temporary housing, what they're offering is about $43,600, okay, for temporary housing. And then in addition to that, there's also what they call the other needs assistance, which is another $43,600. Okay, so for example, property items, cars that burned, et cetera. So I would highly encourage for you guys to go into the FEMA website because there's a lot of information there, dollar amounts that they're actually offering to see if you are eligible.
Can I say one thing about the FEMA?
Yes.
They're opening up one right up in Pasadena locally. They need to do that. Sean, he knew where it was. They're going to open up one here locally, the FEMA. Where's it going to be located?
The new one?
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Okay.
The address is 540 West Woodbury Road. And it's opening up tomorrow at 9 a.m. It'll be open.
Yeah. So in addition to that, so I know Peter mentioned this about the SBA, right? So because you can actually borrow money from them, even if it's for your residence. Okay, so it's not business, but it's residence. You can borrow money, and it's true. The rate is the interest rate is very, very good, and then you can also have it, assuming let's say you qualify. It basically can go up to 30 years. 30 years of having to pay a very low rate.
I asked the gentleman.
Yeah.
Let's think of these things are going through my head. Our mortgage is pretty low compared to most people's because I've been in there for a long time. So I said, if I got enough money to pay off my mortgage, I could use that SBA loan to pay my mortgage down at 2.5%. Okay, I have a great mortgage rate already, but you'd be saving some money there. I'm at about 4% now, and he said, yes, you can do that.
It's like amazing.
Absolutely.
I filled out both those forms right there on the spot, and they had plenty of people to do it. And 24 hours later, I actually wanted to do it for my business, but 24 hours later, the SBA administration calls me and says, Mr. Halpin, we got your application, and we're working it through. They didn't say that I'm going to get it for sure. Right. And I'm going, I've never been to any institution that I got that kind of response, so.
And again,
Yeah,
so in your case, Peter, right? Since you have both the house and the business, you can actually apply for both.
For both, and that's what I did, yeah.
Yeah. So that's very, very good. I also wanted to clarify, tax guy, right? So I mentioned that there's the extension, right? Date, which is October 15, 2025. California, which is great at this point, also conforms to the extension. because usually they're very slow in conforming with whatever federal says. So in this case, also, California does conform as far as like the extended due date.
Ratio, let's jump right in. You've helped a bunch of families through fires before. I know what you do is not a class action suit. Can you explain what the difference is and what it is, and why should everybody here talk to you afterwards and, you know?
So I'm appropriately, well, we haven't covered you yet, but I'm like the cleanup crew, to be honest. So what we do is and we have already done it, we sue Southern California Edison. And there is a huge New York Times article today that it is looking more and more like an investigation will come out and that SoCal Edison will be responsible for this fire, for the Eaton fire. It's not the same as the Palisades fire. That's still, nobody knows what happened there. But in the Eaton fire, if there is liability, and it is our job to prove that there is liability, what happens is all of the gaps that we've been talking about here, which is what insurance covers, what they don't cover, your relocation costs, your lost wages, your personal property, your landscaping that may not fall under any part of the insurance, that's what we sue them for. Plus personal injuries, if there are any, and emotional distress, which every single person who has been affected in this fire has. Baseline, period, end of story. Some have much more. This has affected your lives in so many ways. People have lost years of memories. They've lost items of loved ones who have passed. There's so much that's not insured, that's priceless, and that falls in its own bucket at the end of the day. So we have a suit going, and and it's not a class action. Liability is either found or it's not found, and it affects every single person affected. But if there is liability, then each one of you have your own individual claims, and we go after Edison for those claims. And to be honest, it's risk-free. We only get paid if you get paid. And I would recommend every single person affected sign up to sue SoCal Edison. They pay out. There's $21 billion for sure sitting there for this. And then there's actually more on top of that because they have insurance themselves. So they know the drill. The utility companies know the drill. We've done hundreds and hundreds of like litigation which leads to, at the end of the day, if things start looking real bad for them, they're like, okay, make it stop. And then you mediate and settle each person's claim. But it is what, that in the end of the day, at the end of all of this incredible disaster, it's the only thing that can potentially make you whole for all that you've lost. So again, it's the difference between what insurance covers, and there's issues that must be taken care of with insurance. And by the way, the insurance companies also sue SoCal Edison. So, and then what you've actually lost. And so this is to make you whole. And that's what we do. And no upfront costs, all of that. So I'm happy to discuss that with any of you, give you more information. Tanner is in the back. She can take your information. But this is such a catastrophe. It is such a headache. You all are going through so much. And some of your property is not totally lost, and some of it is, but if you have property damage at all, you are eligible for this lawsuit.
So how we visualize this? So in a sense, I will be hiring you to represent me against this lawsuit against Southern Edison. Mm-hmm. But I'm not paying anything up front. Mm-hmm. What you're saying is, hey, it's going to take, 2 or 3 years to get some sort of settlement, but most likely something will come out of it, and that will be a bucket of money that I wasn't. That if I'm not doing this, otherwise I'll leave it on tape.
That's right. if you're not, so we take 25% of what we recover for you at the end. So if you're not doing that, you are leaving money on the table. Your lives have been turned upside down. I mean, just at a very, very basic level, the emotional distress of this catastrophe it has a value. I mean, that has a value. But all of these costs you're incurred, you don't even know your costs yet, right? You haven't tried to rebuild yet. You don't know if you're underinsured. Some people don't have insurance. You don't know those costs until you go through it a while. So we are here with you to go through it, to get those costs through time. But those are hard costs, and then there's the soft costs as well. You will leave money on the table if you do not join the lawsuit.
It does sound like out of everything that we spoke about, this is the easiest part.
Yeah, this is easy. We need your records. You give your we are here with you along the way. So we form a relationship for years, because as your costs come in, as you learn more about your damages, as you get insurance, Ray was such an amazing resource here. As all of those things come to fruition, as you get your rebuilding costs, as you go, things change. But that's what we're monitoring, and at the end, that's what we ask for, that giant gap, or not, plus the distress, your lost wages. How long have you been out of your home? How much is your relocation fees? So we're there to recoup it, to just bundle it all up, plus the kind of the emotional issues as well. So that is what we do, and it is real money to you. I will say that. It is real money to you.
What was the term that you used? I know when I said it was a class action suit.
Oh, it's a mass tort. So it's not a class action. A class action is where everybody's treated very similarly. This is not we treat you each as an individual. So because every single one of you has separate houses, property, memories, different losses. Every single person in this catastrophe has different losses. And so that's what we're capturing is it's all unique to you. What makes it kind of giant is like the liability is shared among all of the people in the Eaton fire.
Okay, I test.
Yeah, and I'll just say we were very intentional about bringing Rachel. And I know I started the night by saying there's people that are going to try to get you to sign up for things and they want to just make money off of you. But we were intentional in bringing Rachel here for the purpose of communicating to you that this is the thing that you definitely, absolutely should be doing. Because I represent insurance companies, I sort of have seen this over the years. The San Diego fires, the Thomas fires. Like every time it's an electric company, a utility involved, they have a huge pile of money and insurance, and they will pay it out. And so that's the one person that you absolutely should be hiring from kind of the legal side of things, that there's no reason to wait on that. So I definitely want to encourage everyone to give their names to Rachel and her team.
And asking for a friend, but what's the statute of limitations on that?
Oh, well, we've already filed. So but as to you all for the liability, I think it's probably 3 years, but the faster you go, the more we can tell you what to do and we can monitor, and the more they're reacting. We know the counsel, so Cal Edison has hired counsel. We're actually very close with their counsel, which is very good in settling cases once we get there. And also, every single member of your household has damages, including your children. So that is something to be mindful of, is that they fall under you, minors fall under their parents, but every single person is part of this lawsuit.
So that reminds me of a question that I got from a friend. They asked, my house wasn't burned by the fire.
Mm-hmm.
However, the air quality and the toxins in the area are affecting our ability to move back into our home. is this something that we should also?
So there is a nuisance value to that. I'm not going to, there's, the statute of limitations question is difficult because there's so many different causes of action that each have their own statute. But nuisance is one of them, and they do have a nuisance value. That person who has not lost their home but doesn't want to come back because they're worried. I am not taking those cases.
Okay.
So I am not watering down our cases. Our cases, it doesn't have to be major property damage, but we do require property damage because we are putting forth our strongest cases. I filed on behalf of a woman named Sarah Ray and her 4 children, she is a widow and has 4 children, 2 through 11. I mean, now a family of 5 is forced to look for housing. It's not like you can just move your family of 5 from place to place. I mean, it's like the true intricacies of everybody's stories are so much. So that person has a claim that is not exactly the clients we're taking.
I know both of you, your house didn't burn out, but
Not the small damage
Yeah.
is the window structure and backyard.
Yeah, that counts.
But they said that they're gonna replace it, but you said no.
Who's they?
The
The insurance.
not the servant, that's the tractors.
But hired by the insurance company, I assume, right? Yeah, I mean, that should be covered. And I don't know if it would be helpful, Giovanni, but I can answer a question on the insurance side for people that yeah, so there's sort of maybe 2 categories here. One is the people who have smoke damage and are displaced. Other people who don't like the quality of the air and are displaced. Technically, insurance only will pay for your alternative living if you've suffered property damage. That's kind of the trigger. And so bad air is not property damage. Smoke damage is property damage. So you may not have,
Yes.
it may not look damaged, but it would still be damaged if there's smoke, even if that's eventually going to go away or if it can be cleaned or whatnot, but that would be enough to entitle you to the alternative living. And then they will come in and either replace your furniture and clothes and the food maybe because it suffered smoke damage too. Or at least clean it. So 100%, if you're at all worried about was my house exposed to smoke, you should report that to the insurance company. And they may actually even pay for alternative living just due to the air. Now that's something that if they were to do it, they were to do it as a courtesy. They're not required to do that, but oftentimes I've seen insurance companies do that. My mother-in-law, they had bad air in the Thomas fire in Ventura. They lived near Nathan, but they didn't suffer any actual damage. And I talked to the insurance company and got them to put them up in the Langham for 3 weeks. So you can sometimes ask, and look, all insurance companies right now are really actually trying to be generous. And so even if you're just worried about quality of air, ask. Just report it and ask and say, I don't think it's safe for my children. And say there may be smoke damage, right? Because at a minimum, it puts the burden on the insurance company to go out and test for smoke damage because that's not a visible thing necessarily. So you definitely should try to make that request and push it, and you may be able to get it.
And for those also who are able to live in their house, I think FEMA also is offering a one-time cleanup payment. So, I mean, it's not much, but it's
Main question, so the smoke damage aspect of it, because we were going to start getting things cleaned up on our end. Should we, before we start having because we've already hired a special hauling company because we had a significant amount of wind damage, and then from that wind damage we had embers that flew over, and then we've had some smoke damage. And to the point where we have to drain our pool because it's just like our pool people were like, you don't want to touch this water, right?
Right.
So when we are talking to our insurance company, should we document this before we start cleaning? Like,
Yes.
should we be doing the documentation
Yes.
versus the hiring the vendors to come and clean
Correct.
it? Because we've started to
Yeah.
try and clean it.
Yeah, they could technically deny you if you go off and do the work without them knowing about it, having the chance to investigate.
and approving it.
Does that include gardeners as well?
Yeah, everything. You want to report everything before you do it. Now they understand everyone was in a terrible situation, and so I don't think they're going to be overly strict about it. But technically, they have the right to investigate and confirm that it actually is damaged. Because what they don't want is people deciding, oh, I'd love to get, you know, a new landscaping, so I'm going to pay for it all, and then tell the insurance company, oh, it was because it was damaged, right? They never had a chance to inspect that. So they have the right to inspect and say, yes, this is truly damaged. We will write a check for you to do this work. So you want to get them informed and approved and all that stuff before you go off and start spending money. Now, again, I think that they are going to be flexible, and let's say you've done half of it, but the other half is still the way it is. They have a chance to inspect it still and see that, yes, this was clearly damaged. So I think they're going to give you a break, but you need to get them informed before you do spend any money on anything. You need to get them informed and an opportunity to look.
One question about mandatory evacuation. So we had full on the sheriff's on our street, and then we had National Guard. So we weren't allowed to go back to our house. Also, it was inhabitable. The water was gray water. You couldn't touch it, couldn't drink it, couldn't do anything. We had no electricity, and we had no gas. Does that count to uninhabitable and for the insurance to help?
Yeah, and you actually said you had real property damage, so you would be entitled to it no matter what. But my experience has always been, even if there's no property damage, but you're subject to evacuation order, they will cover that. Whether they're required to or not, my experience has always been, if you're subject to, frankly, even if you're near like the yellow zone where it wasn't mandatory but it was recommended or something like that, even then I've seen most insurance companies will pay for that.
And just to be clear, to reiterate what you were saying, it's not about you documenting it, it's about you filing a claim and letting them decide what to do. You know, so you file the claim with them, and then they will tell you, okay, go ahead and clean it up, or let us come out and inspect it, or we'll send somebody to clean it up. So you need to file the claim ideally before you do too much, or just right away, file the claim.
Right. Scott, too much about litigation is really way out of my understanding, but you said you're trying not to water down cases, so there was a question about smoke damage only. Is that out of your...
So if there's smoke damage in your home, that's fine. Soot and smoke damage is actually it can be a very big deal. Yeah. So that's fine. I think what your question was closer to the home not having any damage. So yes, if there's any property damage, we're fine.
Understood. And then just bigger picture, I think many groups are suing Edison, I guess. How does it work when many groups are suing one entity and there's liability found? Like, are they each settling with all these?
We all work together. So that is the truth. So we have a 5 o'clock meeting tomorrow. So all the plaintiff's lawyers you gotta pick one you like. Because we do work closely.
We
We're
picked
part of the
one that we
community.
like to come tonight, so.
That's right. That's right. Quantify. This is their background checks.
Yeah.
And we also, Sarah still needs to talk about real estate.
Yeah, and she's gonna come back in a second, but I know there was.
So what's the future of insurance for my case? Like I live in a higher expired housing.
That's the big question.
So I don't want to feel like $10,000 a month, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no one's writing insurance right now. I'm weirdly, right in the spot where I was about to buy a house. And so getting insurance for my new house is very present on my mind. And no insurance, basically all insurance companies have a moratorium right now in this area. So fair is guaranteed that, it's expensive. It doesn't cover everything, as was mentioned. But that's your only choice. It's going to be your only choice. Now, I do think that there was emergency orders that were issued that prohibit insurance companies from non-renewing. So it may actually be okay, because I think that they have to renew. I forget, it was like a 12-month period where, because insurance companies were leaving, right? They were in the process of pulling out. Now they're sort of forced to stay in under the emergency order.
I thought I probably should address rentals, because a lot of you haven't been renting in a long time. And just to give you some basic tips on what landlords are going to be looking for, and then some free services that the Pasadena Association of Realtors are providing. They have hours where you can sit down and you can get a list based on your price point and what you need. So I'm suggesting that, similar to when you apply for a mortgage, landlords are going to be looking at things and making sure that you can actually be in your property for a long period of time, long enough to cover your rebuild. And so they're going to want to see 2.5 to 3 times the income available. Now, some of you have mortgages, so they're going to take that into consideration too. It's a very competitive rental market right now, and so I suggest coming prepared. There's about 6 things that I've suggested to people to have on their person. You want to bring pay stubs, 2 months of pay stubs. And again, you don't want to be going after these properties where the landlord's not necessarily going to approve you, because they're going to be looking very carefully at what you can afford. I would also bring, if you're a 1099, you want to bring copies of tax returns or have them available to send to the landlord. Also, a declaration page. So the landlords are now asking, they want to see that you're going to have enough money in your insurance policy and how long it's going to last. Because again, for some of you, you still have mortgage payments. So I would bring that, talk to your insurance agent, and have something in writing that maybe they can look at to approve you. It's standard to have a copy of your driver's license, so that would be another sheet that I would have. There are plenty of places where they're going to ask for a credit report and an application. This can get very costly, so a lot of the local agents should be using something called Rent Spree. They've waived their fees, and you should be able to use them for up to 30 days where they're valid. I wouldn't do that first, because some people might be using different means to check your credit. So what I'm suggesting is find a free service where you can print out something that shows your credit report and have your name on it. And just as a reminder, any documents that you're handing over to people, I would make sure you're crossing out any information, especially your social security number. And then I do want to mention that unfortunately, landlords generally don't like to see pets. And based on the research I've seen, you reduce what you're looking for and the availability by about 2/3 of what's out there. And so I know this is sort of a hard call, but you might think about boarding pets temporarily because the rental market is so competitive. Where can you look for rentals? I'm sure you guys have all seen online portals, Zillow, RentPads, and again, the multiple listing service does have rentals that aren't necessarily on the public websites, and Pasadena Foothill Association will sit down with you, they'll print out a list. I recommend that you're going to have better luck working directly with the leasing agent instead of having your own agent go with you. Over the years, I've done a few rentals for clients that I've had, and generally they like to have their agent sort of screening people and understanding who's going to be staying in their property. So just to give you an advantage, I would have those documentation, I would have it ready in a paper form so that you can hand to someone after you see something you like, and then also a PDF that you can email them to them and just remind them this was us. And I think this point was already brought up, but just really making sure you're being conservative, because landlords don't want to see you unsuccessful, right? Depending on how long this process takes, you want to look at the amount your insurance is going to give for rental property and spread it out over a period of time. What were we thinking, 3 to 5 years? So again, and if in the future, again, I hope you're all going to rebuild. I don't know what's going to happen in the market. We are seeing an uptick right now. I don't think it's necessarily because of the fires, but it may be premature for that. After the elections, we saw a big uptick
In my particular case, the listings I've seen, I've sort of been asking people, are you a fire victim? And that hasn't generally been what we're seeing yet. That may be different in a few months when people sort of have figured out whether they're going to rebuild or cash out. But if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any real estate questions if you're thinking you're going to sell. I have a sheet I've put out here where I can take your name, number. I also have a link to some of the forms that were discussed here in a Dropbox that I can send you for, easy access instead of going through and looking on the websites. I've already done some of the legwork for you, in addition to some other material that might be useful in this time. So that's what I have to.
So the follow-up of this panel is going to be virtual. Probably in about 2 to 3 weeks from now, we'll do a virtual panel because things will continue to evolve and be modified. There'll be new information. We were given last minute the privilege to be here at the school auditorium, knowing how important it is, I think, to get together as a community to really have the opportunity to look at each other and talk and really feel like a community. So, if you want to be in tune to future panels like this one, or maybe you yourself can just come in with more questions. Again, we put this together because this is a trusted group of individuals, right? You can go online, you can do your own research, maybe you can come up with your own trusted group. You can let us know about it and we'll fold it in. We trust you, okay? So if you want to be in tune with that, I don't have a sign-up sheet, but I'll give you my cell phone. You could call me, text me right now, and that way you have that information and you can let me know, hey, sign me up for send me your name and your email, and that way I sign you up. Oh, there's a sign up right there?
Yeah, Tanner can take the sign up.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. That'd be fantastic. Yeah. Leave us there with your name and your email and your cell phone number, and I'll make sure that you get the next check-in that we will have because of this. We only got 5 more minutes. Any other last question? Peter?
And that's we have the gentleman for taxes, but is it strictly better to claim losses for 2024 in 2024?
You're going to have to do some.
We'll have to do the math. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a good time to hire a tax person. I like to do my taxes, but I think if I were in that situation, I want to. Thank you guys. God bless you all.